Hello, it's Jen. Thank you for joining me for this short tutorial on differentiating the elbow versus differentiation in the shoulder in a very specific position. We're looking at hands and knees to forearms and knees. To begin, you are going to take your palms so they face up. Imagine you're holding a platter. You're going to lift your elbows up so that your platter is now pointing behind you. Lower down. Stay with this, do this 2 or 3 times, and maybe even exhale as you take your platter up. Inhale as you take your platter down. And then relax there. A few things to look at for this for yourself to ascertain whether you struggle with pure shoulder flexion, and I know I said this was about elbow extension and flexion, which we'll get to in a second, is when you look at me from the side, when I take my elbows up, my back doesn't arch and my shoulders don't lift up. At some point, if I were to keep reaching, my shoulders would lift up because that's how the arm works. But for this range of motion, the shoulders don't need to participate in the motion. The other thing to look for is there's a tendency to rotate the hands internally. So it's as though the pinky fingers are moving away from each other and the elbows splay out to the sides. So if I were to do that, it would look a little bit like this. Very challenging for people to keep their elbows in by their sides. After you've looked at this on yourself and determined whether or not this applies to you, if this is challenging for you, then you can try a very simple exercise on the floor that will help teach you how to move from the elbow versus the shoulder and how to make this shape. So come onto your hands and your knees and begin reaching the elbows straight down. Lift the elbows up. And I know you're thinking, why did we do that other exercise? And that's because this position, if I take myself up, looks just like this. If I turn my palms, it would be platter going behind me. So lower the elbows down. And when you lower the elbows down, see if you can do it without shifting the hips back. And what I mean by that is the hips don't go that way. The other thing to look for is often people will lift the insides of their palms away from the floor. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but because the goal of this particular movement is to teach elbow extension and flexion, you want to see if you can keep the knuckles of the thumbs, the index fingers, the third, the fourth, and the fifth fingers all pressing down. So you don't lose contact with that inside part of the palm. The final thing to look for is, are the elbows going straight back or are they unable to? Now, if you've got some sort of mobility restriction and they can't, that's no big deal. You can do this exact same movement against a wall. So you stand facing a wall, take your hands against the wall, reach the elbows towards the wall, reach the elbows away from the wall. You'll experience the same action. And the great thing about this particular movement is it begins to teach you how to support yourself using the entire forearm when you're in a forearm and knees position or a forearm and tiptoe position, which is a standard plank. There are a lot of other ways to take the elbows to the floor. I will discuss those in future tutorials. Like, there's a lot of benefit, for instance, to this position. There's a lot of different ways your hands and your forearms can interact with the floor. But learning how to do it in this way, where everything is sort of in line, again, depending on your anatomy, things might be My elbows can be pretty much right under my shoulders. Some people's will be a little bit outside their shoulders. And I've met some people whose elbows are a tiny bit more internally rotated towards each other. And that's just how their arms were built. And that's all totally fine too. You play with it, see what works best for you. Give it a try. See how it goes. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.